Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, a forum for business owners and senior executives to share the experiences about the elements that drive their success. Your host is Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media.co.
So Chag, that's very familiar. I feel like I've heard of Chag. I don't know how or when.
They
but I
are
have.
a company out in the Bay Area, and they started maybe 10 years ago, more than that, doing textbook rentals. If you remember, as a college student, you
That's what it is.
arm and a leg paying for textbooks. So that's how they started their business. They did textbook rentals, and they ended up becoming pretty popular among students because they saved you so much money.
Yes. There was eFollet. Is that a thing?
I think that's a online program to find digital books. Like Follett is a big information library company.
So I think we're going to record this thing warts and all. And before we go too far into the conversation, our guest today is Neal Taparia. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, it's good enough.
What's the right way?
Taparia.
There we go. Okay. Neal Taparia, entrepreneur, investor, advisor, currently the co-founder of SOTA Partners, SOTA.
Yep.
Forbes contributor. So tell us about your involvement with Chag.
Sure. So I had built a company called Imagine Easy Solutions that I actually started as a high school student. And it was started off the premise of bibliographies. Do you remember doing that back in the day when you were a student?
Bibliography, so like citing sources?
Yes, exactly. So you might remember it can be a total pain in the ass. There's all these rules and you have to follow all these structures to properly cite that information. So back in 2001, these were like the AOL days. My buddy and I created software that just automated that whole process. So you could put in a book or a website. We'd find ways to get that information, and we built these algorithms to then structure it and create citations. So a process that could take 1 to 2 hours, we boiled it down to 5 to 10 minutes. So it was pretty game changing back then. And we call the product Easy Bib. Bib is in bibliographies. And that's
amazing.
What's that?
That's amazing. When was that thing? It missed me. Not really. I graduated in 2004. I could have totally used that, and I just didn't know about it.
Yeah. Well, these, I guess, were the earlier days, relatively speaking, of the internet. So catching wind of these products took a little bit more time back then than it does now. But EasyBib ended up becoming a pretty ubiquitous product. And my friend and I built a company around it from 2008 to 2016, where we ended up with a portfolio of educational products that help students with writing. So that included citations, but we expanded to grammar and plagiarism checking and research and note taking. And ultimately, we were reaching about 30 million students annually. So it was a pretty large education technology platform. And we grew it to about 20 million in revenue without taking on financing. So it was a pretty interesting journey just to take something that we conceived as high school students and grew into substantial business. And Chag, they were undergoing a digital transformation from a textbook rental company to a company that was digital first, helping students. So we were a natural fit within their company. And that is my link to Chag, because we sold the business to Chag and I was an executive there for about 3 years.
That's amazing. So what do you think was your key growth driver with Imagine Easy Solutions?
Sure. So I think there were a few things there. One is, we had created a product that we wanted ourselves. We were the end user for the product. So we were really focused on how do you create this extremely easy and seamless experience. That's why, we named our umbrella company Imagine Easy Solutions, and we named the product Easy Bib. So students always want shortcuts. They want things easy. So we were just laser focused on making a product where students would use it and say, oh my God, this is so simple, so easy to use. I have to use it. But what we found accidentally is that when you just create a good product experience, people want to tell other people about it. So we were lucky to hit product market fit because we had this vision that solved our own problem. And when we did that, we just found that a lot of people organically started talking about the product. We also found that teachers were super influencers for us in two ways. One is when teachers adopted the product and liked it, they would tell their whole classroom about it. So you educate one teacher about it, they would tell 20 of their students about it. They would also tell fellow teachers and librarians about it. So you kind of created a network effect that way. But the other interesting thing that happened was teachers always have websites with resource pages. And they would end up linking back to EasyVib. And every time that happened, it would improve our SEO and our search engine results. And that was extremely helpful too, to get discovered in search engines. So I think all those forces combined helped us really grow EasyVib.
So it was really an SEO play and the network effect.
Exactly.
No marketing, no like concerted. Was there a marketing effort of any type other than like a focus on SEO?
So there was, I mean, we spent a lot of time thinking about how do you create relationships with teachers. So we would bring a lot of teachers in the fold to host webinars, to put out informational pieces where teachers would want to come to our website, use our resources, learn about our brand, learn about our products, and then share that in the classroom. So that was a form of content and thought leadership marketing that was really helpful. And we emailed God knows how many teachers and educators, thousands, regularly. In fact, early on, when I was just a high school student, I would just email teachers every day. I'd come home from school. And one day I got called into the principal's office because a teacher thought and complained that I was sending viruses around, which is not the case. And if anything, it just taught me that I need to double down on the effort because I was actually reaching teachers and they were reading my emails. So that was a huge growth driver for us.
What's interesting to me, Neal, is that like, and I can't go into details about it, but what I can say is that what I've found is that when people identify a thing that works too well, they often think you're actually doing something that is nefarious.
Sure.
It's really interesting. Like literally, this is an experience that has been prevalent. Like I can name you numerous circumstances where it's like, no, this thing just works, and then the platform blocks it. Like I remember being on Reddit. I think Reddit is a fantastic platform. It's like, all right, I'm going to do things to grow attention on Reddit until these like really over aggressive moderators are like, no, you can't do it, even though it's completely within the rules of the of the board. Like I had a food blog and I was like, I'll post food photos all day. It's like original content. I think it's fascinating how every time there are haters. There's so many haters in so many places.
Yeah, with EasyVib, we had a lot of teachers initially have an allergic reaction to the product. So they thought this was a way of circumventing how people should be writing citations and bibliographies. But the truth was it was saving students time, and it actually encouraged them to cite more, which reduces plagiarism because you're actually referencing everything you used in your paper. When you have to spend 2 hours doing that, students naturally say, well, maybe I just won't cite these sources because I'm too lazy. That's how students think. So it took almost 10 years for teachers to realize this does a lot of good for students and we should embrace the product. So we had this huge runway to grow because teachers actually came to the conclusion that this was a good product and a good educational product that they should use in their classrooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, with every advent of new technology, it's like, are you interested in the sadistic work of doing tedious and monotonous stuff because it's tedious and monotonous and you had to do it as a kid? Or are you actually interested in the end goal of like citing sources?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fascinating.
I think
Like
the
humans.
Yeah, I think the lesson is if you have that vision, you have to stick with it, and there's always going to be resistors. But over time, if it's a good vision, people will adopt it and see the value that it brings to the table.
So you were at Chegg for a couple of years, for 3 years, and you continued their growth with the integration of your business. How was that experience going to another company, the acquiring company? I don't have any experience with that, and I've heard actually some really interesting good things about those experiences. Like, tell us about like how you found that experience going to an acquiring company.
Yeah, so it is a very different experience, running a scrappy, bootstrapped company. So we had grown our team to about 60 people in size, and when we joined Chegg, it was a company well over 1,000 people. So it was really interesting to go through that transition. We were lucky because the leadership team there trusted us a lot and gave us a lot of responsibility. But at first, when we joined, it was really rocky, especially from a cultural point of view, because we had all these people that we hired personally who wanted to work for us, and they had no idea who Chegg was. They weren't really necessarily behind their mission. They did not sign up to their job to work for Chegg. So we had a lot of people who just lost their motivation when we joined Chegg. And it took 6 months to 12 years to recreate a positive culture. It was something that was important to us. So that was a process of having a lot of people resign, having tough conversations with people, asking them, is this still the right place for them to be? But also bringing in new blood that really liked Chegg, what we were doing at Chegg as a business unit. And over time, we were able to change that culture around. I would say too, Chegg made me a much better operator. It made me really think about how to focus my business and our business resources on what's really big enough to matter. You could be doing 1,000 things at once, but only a handful of those things will really move the needle on the business. And it also taught me how to be much more numbers and metrics driven. So to give you an example, we had daily forecasts on our business. So we knew where revenue should be landing daily. And we built some sophisticated models around that. And I thought it was onerous at first, but what it teaches you is that if you are above plan or below plan, you start asking why and you start going to the drivers of that. And so if you're below plan, you see different KPIs that might not be meeting your expectations, and you're forced to understand it and come up with contingency plans. So a lot of that taught me to be a much better operator, which helps me to this day.
The measurement of something, just drawing a line, basically just like at the very in a very simplistic explanation, right? Drawing a line in the sand and saying we expect to do X.
Exactly.
If you don't do X, why is that happening? What are the factors at play? Yeah,
And
we're not doing that.
interestingly, with at Chegg, they would always push you to dream big. That was one of their values. So they would say, set a goal, which they would call the BHAG. It's a big, hairy ass goal. And that was a goal that just seemed hard to accomplish. But the whole idea was if you set a big goal, then you're forced to go through the process of understanding what does it take to hit that goal. And you start asking that question, what if we did this? What if we did that? And you start assembling a plan. And before you know it, you start building conviction in that plan. And even if you don't hit that plan, you're still going to do better than where you initially thought you were going to do. And I had never operated like that. I thought it was crazy at first. But now I look back on that and I think that's the best way one could possibly think about running a business.
How did you build culture inside Imagine Easy Solutions?
So that culture that we really tried to build stemmed from my experience and my business partner's experience at our past jobs. So I had a Wall Street job at Lehman Brothers. And that was a job where you were very much a cog in a factory, and you were expected to do work and go home and work at odd hours. They didn't really care about you or your work-life balance. So for us from the get-go, one of our company values was simply, are you happy coming to work? because that was something that was just obviously not present in an investment banking setting. The care for your well-being and growth just wasn't as obviously there. So that was really our North Star when it came to building the culture of our company. Everything really would come down to, are you happy coming to work? Because if you're happy, you're committed to what you're doing, you like your teammates, you trust them, you hold them accountable, everything stems from that. So that, using that as a North Star, I think helped us create a really positive work culture at Imagine Easy, which we then brought to Chag.
So let's talk about what you're doing today.
Sure.
Is it pronounced SOTA or SOTA?
It's SOTA Partners. So my friend and business partner who worked with me at Imagine Easy, he's a close friend from growing up, and we work well together. We have created this entity where we started investing in companies, but we're entrepreneurs at heart. So we started launching some companies as well. So one of the first things that we looked into were automated R&D tax credits, and we didn't think that was a good business for us to get into. We also looked into some technology where we could create walking tours for any locality by leveraging data from Wikipedia. But most recently, we started focusing on building classic games that can help with brain training. And so we have a site, it's called Solitaire, and it's solitaire.com, that on the outside is just a solitaire site, but we're doing a lot behind the scenes that could link it to brain training. And we think it's really interesting because the target markets overlap. And there's a massive opportunity in brain training, and that has been going really well. We're getting well over 50,000 games being played a day, and we're seeing really good growth with Solitaire, and it's a lot of fun because it's in the gaming space.
So women 25 plus, 25 to 54 who like to play games?
Yes, so we get a lot of those users, but even people older than that, who want a distraction, they're looking to play games. We even find in some of our surveys, a lot of people are at work and they just want a 5-minute distraction or break. And Solitaire is a very simple game where you can just de-stress and relax.
How do you incorporate brain training into that process?
So there's a lot of studies that show that novelty helps with a lot of your spontaneous memory and thinking. So Solitaire, interestingly, has billions of permutations and various degree levels depending on the deck. So it really helps you stay on your feet if you don't know you're going to win a game or not. So that variability is huge. But more importantly, we are researching how beating your own score or repeating the same sequence to win can help with memory as well. So we have a number of ideas that we're exploring that link to some concepts around brain training that we think we could tie back into Solitaire.
What's your monitor? So this is a company that you're investing in, yes?
It's a company we launched ourselves.
You launched it, and what's your monetization? Is it advertising or subscription?
So we are experimenting with that right now. Ads is something that we could definitely do, and we're testing that to see the impact that has on user experience. But our goal is, how do you make this a valuable subscription service where it is valuable enough where people want to subscribe?
That's fascinating. So I'm looking at, so what I imagine the development and implementation of this is not particularly expensive. Would I be right about that?
It's not incredibly expensive. It's something that we've been able to create with not too much investment, but we are going to have to invest on the brain training side to make sure it works, to make sure that everything there delivers to the promises that we have, and that's where we're starting to invest more time and resources.
So these other solutions or these other companies. So I'm seeing Impossible Foods. So you're investing in Impossible Foods.
Yes, so we are lucky to have some opportunities to deal flow come our way. And when we see something that we think is changing the world and that we like, we'll opportunistically write checks from SOTA partners to be involved with.
That's
them.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
So what's the ethos for this? It looks like it's cultural of like, I don't know. There, you can probably describe it better. Like there's definitely seems to be a trend here. Can you talk about like the types of companies again that you're investing in?
Yeah, the theme we tend to look at and like are the future of food and education. So one of the companies we invested in, it's a friend's company. It's called TransferVR, and they're taking virtual reality and teaching manufacturing skills with it. But their vision is you don't have to go to community college, you don't have to go to college anymore. You need specific skills to land a job. So, how can you take someone who just completed high school and put them through some VR training, which is scalable, and then get them jobs at top manufacturers? And Transfer VR actually has a partnership now with the state of Alabama, and through their training, they've placed people at great companies like Lockheed Martin.
So how do you like? What is your involvement in like transfer VR? I mean, I imagine you're much more involved than just writing checks. Is that? But I don't know much about how these situations work.
Yeah, it depends. There's some companies where we'll write checks and we won't be too involved. Others where we've taken advisory roles. With Transfer VR in particular, I advise informally the company. The founder is a friend who I believe in, so I'll oftentimes chat and brainstorm with him about where his business is going, or if I can help them out in any type of way via introductions. That's something I try to be value add with.
And when you look at companies that you're investing in, like is it the leadership? Is it the product? Like which one is there one that's more important than the other? I understand it has to fit within the sort of goals and thesis of your overarching sort of like things that you're trying to accomplish. But like, how do you make a decision?
Yeah, for me, it really comes down to the entrepreneur. That's the most important criteria. You just have to have the grit and willingness to learn to figure out how to make a business succeed. Chances are your initial idea isn't going to be good enough to succeed, but it's the entrepreneur behind it who can read the tea leaves and understand what users are saying to properly navigate and iterate on the business to make it something successful and then learn how to scale that. Then, of course, you want to hear and see a reasonable idea. But I've just found that ideas are a dime a dozen. So you should obviously believe in the idea, but to me, the entrepreneur is more important than the idea.
I mean, the interesting thing to me is that like on my entrepreneurial journey is that like there are so many unexpected twists and turns, and like I feel like right now over the last 2-3 months we've turned into this new it's this experience that I'm having that's sort of new to me, that all of a sudden a whole new world of opportunities have opened up that I would have imagined exist. I have imagined that they existed 5 years ago or 6 years ago. But it's interesting to me that these opportunities now are available and within arm's reach.
Sure.
And it's interesting because the nature of our business, I think, is fundamentally changing today, and it's very different than where it was a year to a year and a half ago. And I don't know, it's just like an interesting, fun experience to be like, oh, there's a whole new path available for us and opportunities that didn't exist a couple years ago. And you got to have the right team and staff and vision to kind of like capitalize on it. And I imagine, so yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
I'm with you, man. Makes 100% sense.
So what is Clover Food Lab?
That's another company we invested in. They're Boston-based food company, and it's actually a fast casual retail operation. But what we liked about it was they source all their food locally, so they're very much geared towards sustainability. But what happens is when you source your food locally, it's very, very fresh and very, very tasty, and all their food is vegetarian. And when you look at environmental impact of food, being vegetarian actually is positive for the environment. So I'm not a vegetarian myself, but I do believe reducing meat intake is a good thing for the environment just because of all the pollution the whole industry causes. So their goal is, how do you make food so good where you are excited to eat vegetarian food? And on top of that, it's locally sourced. So we just really liked the thesis and the idea around it. And they were also getting a lot of good traction in the Boston area, which is an area you wouldn't necessarily associate with people who love their veggies.
Right. Yeah, I'm a foodie, and vegetarian food, you'd have to kind of like trick me.
Yep, exactly. So that is their goal, to convince people like yourself to take a second look at vegetarian food.
How have the last few months, as the COVID pandemic swept through the United States, how have they, how has that experience affected the companies that you're working with? I mean, from a food perspective, it's hard to get people inside to eat. From a VR and technology perspective, I imagine it's a great time to be in that space, especially when you can inform and educate people, and you don't have to leave your home, and you can look silly with VR inside your own room without
Totally.
having to share that with other people.
Yeah, you hit the nail on its head. The distance learning space and VR education has gotten a lot of attention as a result of the pandemic, and I think has led to new business opportunities and renewed momentum for the company. Uh, the restaurant business, Clover Food Lab, is obviously not doing as well as they were pre-pandemic, like all restaurants. I think they are a strong business though, and they have a great chance of continuing to succeed post-pandemic. Even for our solitaire initiative, what's been interesting is looking at the overall games market, it has increased in size. And it's for the obvious reason that people are at home and they need distractions and they're playing more games. So that has added some additional wind behind our back that we did not anticipate.
And how are you acquiring users on the solitaire initiative?
So we've been doing two things primarily. One is we try to partner with organizations that might want a custom solitaire game. And this is more of a fun engagement medium for them. So that's been good to get the word out. And then we're trying to rank well on search engines across keywords so people could find our games when they're looking for that.
I'm seeing a lot of advertising on TikTok for Calm. The app where you can. Did you know that the person who created Calm is the same person who had that $1 million website back in the day?
Which is that the website where he sold every pixel as an
For about
advertisement?
1,000,000 pixels. Yeah, same dude.
Good for him. That is a fascinating. I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of want to just double check that I got that right, but I'm quite confident that that's the case. Because the point is, I was thinking about your acquisition strategy. I was like, if people want brain games, people go to TikTok all the time, and I gotta say, I'm 100% guilty of this. There's so many nights where, after everyone's gone to sleep and like I'm done working, the whole thing, I'm like on TikTok just scrolling. And what's interesting is there's times when I'm interested in really fun and interesting educational content. Like I'll get some really good information about how to do design work on Photoshop. I don't really know how to use Photoshop effectively other than the very little that I know. But like I imagine brain games would do very well for users, even older users.
I need to check that out. TikTok is a channel that we haven't put too much thought into, but I've been hearing really good, positive things about getting the word out on TikTok.
Well, and what's interesting is their ad platform looks a lot like Facebook's ad platform. They're collecting a lot of data. Their setup is more or less the same. You have the campaigns, the ad groups, the ad as the creative. I can't say that their algorithm is as strong as Facebook's or as effective, but I've also tested it very limited on business to business, which is kind of like hard to target on TikTok. Their tools aren't there yet.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had to guess for a consumer facing product, well, number one, the click-through rates are pretty darn strong. Click-through rates are like over 1%. And again, B2B, it could be a lot higher on Facebook. Point of all that is to say, I imagine that customer acquisition for Solitaire would actually probably be effective, depending on your overall thing, would be effective on TikTok as an ad late at night when people want something smarter to do with their brain than scrolling through videos.
Yeah, I love that. That might be my homework after our conversation.
I'll send you a video. I have a video of how to set up a TikTok campaign.
Cool.
Well, cool. Neal Taparia.
Yeah, Taparia.
You know, I definitely want to get Neal Taparia, an entrepreneur, investor, advisor, SOTA partners. So where can people find either you, SOTA, Solitaire? Throw out some contact points.
Yeah, so if you want to check out Solitaire, that's just solitaire.com. It's solitaire with the D.com. Play some games, have some fun. And if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn's a great way to do it. I regularly write some entrepreneurial thoughts on Forbes, and you could just Google that column. And it's a great way just to follow some of the things I'm doing and thinking about.
Awesome. Thank you, Neal. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, likewise, man. Great talking. Thanks for having me.